All right. Does anybody need a sheet or do you have one?
There's one on here. Oh. I might need another one, there's 3 cases.
Need another one, just let me know.
I will.
All right, 3 cases. You know the routine of what we're supposed to be doing with these. So the first one is the volume ventilation. What curve do we want to draw first? Flow. So what is my, go ahead and put my times in here. And we're going to have a flow of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. 10, 20. Okay. So what kind of a flow pattern do we have? We have a square wave at 30 liters per minute. Well, we also have those a half a second inspiratory hold. So how would I depict an inspiratory hold on the flow tracing?
Isn't it at the end of
over 0.5 after 1 second?
Like that. And what's my total cycle time? Or what's my respiratory rate?
1 second.
What's my respiratory rate?
15.
Oh, 15.
So what's my total cycle time?
Whatever 50 divided by 15 is.
4 seconds.
Thank you.
And is there any auto peak?
Nope.
No. Okay. So I'm going to come down. Okay.
So if it was the auto peak, we wouldn't go right back to baseline, we'd have that little bit
Correct.
first.
Correct. Correct. My tidal volume is 500. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that one. I have a plateau. And then I'm going to go ahead and empty it back out.
So we went up to the 5. And we still did are we doing the inspiratory?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm confused.
Okay. So I started off at 0, went up to 0.5.
Yep.
Held that, and then came back down.
Held it for 0.5.
Mm-hmm.
And then came back down.
Mm-hmm.
So how far do we know where to come back down?
Where's your flow in?
So mine is like right here. So I'd come back down here.
You come down to right there.
Something like that.
So that they match up. So that part has to match up with that part. Yep, you got it.
And then we pause. So a little pause and it starts at the next.
Yeah, this is just between the next breath. Yeah, yours isn't that long. Yours is this distance here, between here and here.
So I ended, because this ended right here.
So then you go over to there.
To where that starts.
Correct. Correct. You have to have alignment. And if you notice on the rubric, it's a half a point for alignment, so you don't want to blow anything.
And then I would end it, I'm sorry, I would end it, I would have ended this like here first.
Okay.
So I would end it right here.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Square wave flow pattern generates what kind of pressure pattern? No. Straight line. It's a linear. I'm gonna start at my baseline of 5. We do have a patient trigger, so I wanna denote that. And I'm gonna rise up, from, my baseline of 5 up to my peak of 30. And then I'm gonna do a plateau down to 25 for that half second. And I'm gonna return to baseline right there. Small trigger.
Okay.
Rise to 30. Back down 25. Go up.
Yes, it's the lining up to go here.
Mm-hmm.
So line right here, I'll go down to up there.
Where's your flow in? Your flow in's there, so that means it's gotta come back to 5 at that point.
Cause it starts here.
No, but it's gotta come back before that, you get a small pause there.
Oh, so it's gotta come from that.
Start. Plateau. They all align. Okay. Case 2? Case 2's got kind of a weird, it's similar, except that I have a descending waveform. And I don't know why I came up with these numbers. I don't know if I did. But the peak and the plateau are the same, which is extremely rare. But let's go ahead and draw it. So same idea, I have a peak flow here of 60 liters per minute, but a decelerating ramp. Plateau. And then my next breath is going to start here. Plateau.
So we went to 60,
Mm-hmm.
and then what did we do from there?
And the ramp came back down and ended at 0. There's a small pause then, the plateau, so there was 0 flow. And then I have my expiratory portion.
So our plateau was 25, wait,
Your plateau pressure,
okay.
but we're drawing the flow.
Why did we do the point, or the 0.5? Oh, cause it's
You
inspiratory.
take a hold of 0.5. And I can go ahead and do my volume. Now, the decelerating ramp that we have there, again, looks like this. I can't tell you how many times I'll see people on the test do it like that. An accelerating or ascending ramp. Yeah, that makes no sense. Why would I have at the very beginning of a breath a very slow flow? And you don't get to the fastest flow till the very end. Yeah.
How come you went from the 3 all the way to the 4? Like, how come there's that pause? How come you didn't just go dip it down and go
There's
before.
no flow, there's no flow, there's no volume. You can't have volume change without flow, right? And we're gonna see in a second when I draw the pressure, it's gonna be a zero pressure at that point, or baseline pressure. So here I have patient trigger. And what kind of a pressure curve does a decelerating ramp cause?
Where?
National decay.
No,
Shark tooth.
shark fin.
Oh, sure.
Shark tooth. I don't even know what it's called.
Okay, so my peak pressure is 25, my baseline's 5, and then I have a pause, and then I'm gonna come back to my baseline like that.
So the inspiratory hold for pressure, it goes at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Pressurize the lungs, hold it, exhale. Hang in there, girl.
I'm still in volume,
Okay.
so I went up to the 0.5
Right,
and then.
so I'm starting at 0,
Yeah.
I'm going up to 0.5.
Well, I'm starting here and I'm going to this
Mm-hmm,
0.5.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then I have a half a second hold.
How far do I know when to go down?
How far to go here?
Okay.
No, 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 no. You gotta show it as a plateau. So you gotta have it so that it's a square across.
Oh, so that's for the 0.5,
Mhm.
okay, and then how do I know where to draw
And
it
then
down to?
where does this match? Yep, you got it.
Oh, volume, that kind of looks funny.
Okay, so then it's gonna be here.
Yeah, probably be a little bit more. But you got the idea. Make sure they all align.
And then, how do I, this is the.
Yep, you got it.
How do I know to do a hold, like yours, mine's in the middle here, and yours is like here,
Where does the next breath start?
right here,
So that, it's gotta be 0 all through here.
okay,
And then it's gonna go for the next breath up to 0.5.
up to where this is, here, and
Yeah,
then start here.
so this is, well, this is the start of the breath. So
Mhm.
we're, from here,
Yeah,
go up to 0.5
yeah,
by 1 second. Pause, and you're gonna have a flat part. Good.
Mhm.
And then you're gonna come back to here. Right there. You got it, you got it. Good one.
Square's exponential decay?
Pressure controls exponential decay.
In a square.
Square pressure curves, yeah. We good?
well, it's staying the top one real quick.
Okay. Patient trigger,
I'm at 25 is my peak.
yep. And a decelerating ramp will always cause an exponential decay.
And my peak is 25, so I went to 25. For my plateau is 25.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Okay.
Usually you see the little chair with the seat. It's kind of different. We having fun yet?
No.
I truly believe when we're done with all this, you'll have a better understanding of graphics.
Good.
And think back to the very first day we did these and where we're at today.
I'm still just as confused.
Oh, yes, you are not.
I'm still just getting mixed up with if it's in square waveform, which one did you?
What's the
So
pressure look like?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's only three options you have.
Right.
Can we attempt case 3 by ourselves?
If you want. You wanna try case three, or you just wanna try it yourself?
Let's do it.
Do it? Okay. Yeah, that you have to memorize. Burnt out of your brain. Take a picture of it.
I did. That's what I was looking at.
Can you hand me another sheet? So I don't log and try to.
I mean, need any more sheets?
I did.
Thank you.
Are these two good? All right. Well, you know, this is first tracing, so.
So we have two, these are the exam, two questions, the draw, two waveforms,
Yeah.
they can be like this or like the, right, like the.
Any of the
Is
options
one-
we've had thus far.
Oh,
Is it safe to say that all these numbers on the side are kind of like the
this is
same?
getting exponentially.
So what do we have with this case three? I have a pressure-based breath. So what curve am I gonna draw first?
Pressure.
Pressure. And I have here, we're starting at a baseline of 5, going up to 25, and I have an inspiratory hold of a half a second, and some patient triggers.
Here, cause when I saw your videos, I wasn't here, and you said that you can add peak pressure plus,
Okay, yeah,
what, you can do that? How does this thing work?
this really, it should be set, it should say peak pressure observed or peak pressure set. So let's just say it says observed.
So in the, this is confusing already. So if we have this on the exam, where do we have to put?
On the exam, I will say either observed or set.
Okay, so in cases you set observed, so peak pressure is gonna be 30.
Not if it says observed. If it says observed, then the peak pressure is 25. If I says peak pressure set 25, then I have to add the 5 and the 25 together to get 30.
That is the, okay, so in cases, one more time, observed, you have to, it's 25, okay.
If it's observed, it's whatever it says. If it says set, then I need to do my calculations in my head.
How do we get that again? How far it is over
Say again?
the top part? That is like 1.5.
1 second inspiratory time and a half a second hold.
How do we get the inspiratory time?
Finish
Wait,
it.
that's not
It's up, yeah.
Inspiratory time 1 second.
When do we have to do the total cycle time though?
To figure out where the next breath starts. At a rate of 15, total cycle time is 4 seconds, and then the next breath has got to be given at 4 seconds.
So how do we know what happened when we take this aside? How do you want to drop down to like that 1%?
Whatever you want to.
And then you just drop.
But the flow and the volume will have to match up with that.
we did that little notch because.
I got a trigger. Right? Patient trigger, patient trigger.
I guess I was just thinking like that, you put it here.
No worries, Trevor. How we doing, Emily?
Good, the trigger,
You just need to make sure, if it says patient trigger, then you, on your test, have to give me some indication of that there's a patient trigger.
okay.
Doesn't have to be a big dip, but there should be something there. And if you want, you can circle it and say patient trigger.
Okay.
So how do we, how is that coming down at 3 and then there's that hold until the next breath at 4?
Right.
How do I know where does
Okay,
the
good.
3 come
You-
from again?
I just picked it because it's a nice, it's on the line, it's easy to do.
But I just have to know that there's a 1 second hold.
No,
Pause?
that's not the hog, no. It's basically, the way I'm drawing it is that I wanted to have it depicted so that patients don't have a situation where when they're exhaling, they immediately start the next breath. There's generally some time in there between breaths, right? From the time I stop exhaling and the time I start the next breath, there's usually a little bit of a gap in there.
So that's why it's that on the baseline.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so I got a baseline pressure being read here. What does the flow look like in a pressure control breath?
A roller coaster.
A roller coaster. Exponential decay.
Oh.
And what's it going up to?
What are we looking at?
60 liters per minute.
Wait, where did? Oh, no, okay. It almost helps if I draw one at 1 second and the other one's right at 4.
Absolutely it does.
And then do this back here. And then here. And it needs to go back here, but reach baseline a little bit.
Since I have a little bit of a pause here, I gotta have a little pause here.
So does both your inspiratory clauses need to match each other too?
Mm-hmm.
And then.
And then we'll have the volume tracing too.
Here we go.
What a lot of people have found it easier to do is just put dots at the starting point and the ending point.
Okay,
And then
good
just
idea.
connecting the dots.
I like that.
Yeah.
I can do these in my sleep.
For the most part, I got it right, but I didn't do the curve, the exponential decay. For
You
the
gotta show me some
square.
curvature to it.
Yeah, that's the only thing, but for the most part, I think I got it.
Wait.
Because these are two very distinct curves. One is
Descending? The one.
the ramp on the right in blue is different than the exponential decay in red. For one, the one on the right, the blue one, is fixed. The one on the left is variable.
Oh, gotcha.
So if I change compliance and resistance, which we haven't really talked about, it won't alter the one on the blue. It will alter the one on red. As long as mechanics change, graphics are gonna change.
Did you already do the flow too?
Pardon me?
Is that from the last one? You already did the flow here?
The volume?
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh, cause it went up to
500.
right?
You
What?
just need to practice some more.
Goes up to 500, holds it there for a half a second, and then exhales out. You know, if you notice, the flow, the volume, and the pressure all are aligned.
It's just matching off the tone.
Well, if you notice, where am I doing it? I'm doing it right on the second mark. I'm doing that purposefully. They're all on three seconds. It makes it a whole lot easier.
One, hold it for half a second.
Yep. And wherever your flow's coming back to zero, your volume has to come back to zero. And your pressure has to come back to baseline.
And then
Who the heck would have thought of this?
hold that for a second.
All those volume ones look the same pretty much almost.
Yeah, volume is boring, unless you got auto keep or elite. Volume is a pretty boring tracing. That's why on the 840, I only have pressure and flow usually. I don't even look at volume. I mean, there's information you can get from it, but it's not as sexy.
Okay.
I know, don't take it graphics.
None of this is sexy.
Ooh baby, ooh baby, ooh baby.
So how do I know to use that sharp fin, and that's in a descending,
In a descending ramp, you always have a sharp fin.
and it will say that on here? Yeah,
Yeah, the sheet that I'm gonna give you for the exam looks just like those.
Oh. Wait. Descending ramp is sharp. Okay, so that's
so
what
when
the
it
flow
says the exponential decay,
That's only pressure control.
and it's always gonna look like that.
Okay.
Okay. Time for it.
Put a fork in, you're done.